Convince them why they should care, starting with your review score number.
And the review score number is 9.75.
Jesus! Amazing! It's been an amazing string, like
really
a week
has.
for reviews at Game Informer with Metroid Samus Returns. This Cork just reviewed Path of Exile on console, give it a 9.5.
Yep.
And now, to be clear, to like give people context, even though it's apples and oranges, you also gave Bloodborne a 9.75.
I did.
Oh,
and you're right.
interesting.
It is apples and oranges, though.
But
These are
I'm
two
just,
very different kinds of
Well,
experiences.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying they're the same game, but when you're thinking about tiers of a game,
Yeah.
this is like up in that top tier.
This is
with
the
those.
Bloodborne of Baldur's
Yes.
Gates.
This is a, to be fair, yes, this is the pinnacle of computer RPGs, sort of in that same style.
This is right here, or it harkens to?
It comes from the same place, but it's not the same. Like, I don't want to. I said in the review that this is the modern day successor to Baldur's Gate, and I do mean that. I just don't want it to be misinterpreted to say this is just like Baldur's Gate. This is what Baldur's Gate would look like if it was a Baldur's Gate today.
This is the Baldur's Gate 2 to Baldur's Gate 1.
Yeah, sort of that.
You also said it was one of the greatest PC RPGs of all time.
I did, and
Burying
I stand by
the
that.
lead. Okay, Dan, woo us.
Sure. Yeah.
Go.
First off, I mean, there's so many.
Impress me.
I could talk for hours on this game.
Okay.
But I'm trying to condense things here.
Gunning for like 12 minutes.
One of the huge aspects of the game is the just freedom, right? And you can just say that, but like other games claim to have that. This game really has that. It's not just there are multiple ways to solve quests. You don't have to solve quests. You can do whatever you want, however you want. You can make your character as ridiculous or as traditional as possible in the world of fantasy. You can make a character that specializes in like filling up boxes with weight. Just like put a bunch of pans, plates, and everything into a giant crate and smash that over people's heads telekinetically. You can make or make furniture barriers around yourself. Like that's a crazy way to play.
I'm going to force you to come up with some crazy
Please
bombastic
do.
things to say. Did you say it offers the most freedom in any RPG other than like D&D?
Yes. The reason
That's a bold claim.
the reason you look at it like this way is like a lot of the games give you like you have an A and B choice, binary choices. Like I can be the good guy, I can be the bad guy, and maybe it will affect the ending.
Yeah.
In this game, there are so many different choice paths, choice trees. Dialogue driven, what you do driven, events that happen in the game driven, characters you meet driven, side quest driven, everything funnels into this just amazingly freeform experience that's really driven on you. And like, you can go back and check, like load a save up and be like, I'll do this differently and see how it impacts things down the line. And there's
But see, like on paper, that sounds like so many like open world fantasy RPGs to me.
it does, but a lot of them aren't really, when you think about it, they're not really open world, right?
So
there may be 2 ways to do things. There may be 3 even, but they all take you to the same place. This is not the case here.
Okay.
You may end up somewhere completely different. The end of the road is always going to be the same, I think. But how it actually plays out will be different based on your play experience.
And just for a quick overview, right? So it looks a lot like the old PC CRPGs, I believe.
I mean,
is the common
well,
terminology.
graphically,
Perspective-wise,
it has an
it's that
isometric
overhead
style.
thing. Don't
Yeah.
go in expecting this thing to look like Skyrim. It's very much harkens back to those days.
Yeah, and I think to put words in Dan's mouth, I think
Yeah.
that's what he means when he says like the best PC RPG,
Right.
Not like modern RPG that is available on PC, but that's sort of in that old school
Yeah.
sort of like
I'm
isometric style.
I'm speaking like isometric turn-based and rooted in the Dungeons and Dragons feel. Although that kudos to Larian for not sticking to adherence to D&D systems, but going with their own combat system, which is also exceptional.
Okay, the developer Larian,
Yes,
they're European,
Belgian.
Belgian, they made a Divinity Original Sin 1, obviously.
Correct.
Where did they come from? Who
There
are
were
these
other
people?
Divinity games as well as some other. They've done some other projects as well.
Okay.
I mean, we should point out like Divinity Original Sin was also highly acclaimed
For sure.
when it came out too.
Absolutely. But again, this feels like just a huge jump in polish and a lot of the aspects that held Divinity back from being a 9.75. I mean, I gave it a 9. It's still a great game.
Yeah.
The combat was extremely unique. Feels great. The open-endedness was there. Story, not really great.
Interesting.
Mostly incomprehensible for a lot of players, but and way too jovial in tone. A lot of European humor, and that's still in this game. But you
Wait,
guys,
wait.
fun. Boom.
What's European humor?
I don't know.
Benny Hill?
It was just too, yeah. I mean, honestly, it was just too ridiculous. There was humor behind every corner, and humor is important in a game, especially a game as dark as this. You don't want to be too edgy and grimdark. There's got to be some levity, but
So speaking of levity, just in case people can hear it, someone is trying to drill into the studio at this point, so if you can hear that, I'm sorry.
It's
You're
rough.
listening carefully to the audio version. So to
It's
get
quite
back
distracting.
To get back to your topic of player choice, even I started, I played 40 minutes. I gave it the old Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite level try
Right.
on the
Okay.
original Sin 2.
Okay.
And I was flabbergasted by, you could say freedom, you could say overwhelming nature of options. Just like I choose my character, I went with Vane. Fane. Sorry, he's a crazy skull guy. I liked his
Yes.
personality the best of the bunch. But then in that option, I saw people raving about it on Twitter as well. You can choose the instrument in the character creator that is highlighted during combat.
sound. during music. Yes,
But then also throughout the entire game with certain key points. Like if you want the cello highlighted, you want the violin highlighted, you want a piano highlighted. Crazy. Then I start, and I'm a crazy skull man wandering around a ship.
yes,
The entire hotbar is already filled. And I'm scrolling through it like, what? Just give me like 2 or 3 options to start out, please. I'm not a systems guy. Including some of those options are like, transform into a lizard. What? Why do I have this out of the gate? So I did. I'm walking around this ship that's on fire as a crazy lizard skull man. It's crazy.
I agree. And what I will tell you is the most insane part of that game is that the whole first act is much less open-ended than everything that opens up after that. The entire first, it's sort of like the equivalent of the White Orchard in Witcher 3. Very small scale in comparison to what you will unlock after leaving that first experience, which they try to keep a little bit more controlled, I think, to sort of let yourself get a handle on just all the crazy stuff you can do.
So here's what
Joe's smirking.
Well,
I'm
with a
not
weird
smirk
look.
away.
I'm not trying. So I've put in maybe an hour and a half so far.
Okay.
So I passed that introductory sequence. I'm walking around an island
Yep.
and meeting some dudes. But okay, so we've established on this podcast before, like, I really like diving into systems. I like a combat system that's super deep. I like a lot of talent trees and things like that. And all of that's there.
Yes.
But there's something about this game that feels like I'm looking at a grandfather clock where someone's just removed the mechanism and laid it bare on the table for me. So it's like there's an element of just like presentation and cohesiveness that is not part of it. The story, like for instance, I pick up a book and when I open the book, instead of it being a book that's like, oh wow, there's a lot of weird drawings and stuff in here. There's a big block of text that says this book has a lot of weird drawings in it.
Well, that's kind of that
True.
old harkening back to D&D style where there's a narrator explaining exactly how everyone's feeling.
I get it. And like the narrator aspect of that, I guess, feels it just really puts up a barrier between like conveying the narrative to me. And in the way that you choose your lines, it's not like this is what I'm saying. It's like someone is telling you what to say. So it's like, look at him, tell him you're interested in something, rather than just like a line that says I'm interested in that.
Because you're supposed to be telling the DM.
Yeah, so like it just feels like it's throwing up all of this all of this extra wordiness at you.
Yes.
That really that to me is like a real stumbling block when it comes to effectively conveying like characters and story and just pacing of the
And
whole
I
thing.
understand it when it's like, relatively limited animation. I think the game looks good overall and you can zoom in more than you'd think, but relatively limited animation. And so when it's trying to when the narrator comes in saying, oh, the person arched their eyebrow in a curious way and stuff, I can kind of wrap my mind around. But even in the early section, I'm sure you're getting numb to this at a certain point, but in the early section, it was just so many times where it's like the narrator didn't need to say any of that. They're just setting up this line of dialogue and then it just becomes redundant what 2 people are saying.
Yeah.
It's like when I read novels and I think skip the first page of like a Hawthorne book because it's all going to be description.
Okay, yeah, it's exactly that.
Snob. And again, like I understand that this is a part of this genre in a way,
Yeah.
right? But I feel like if you're trying to make a modern successor, it's like you capture the essence of what made those fun while like still like modern. And like, to me, that just feels like such a conspicuously archaic part of the experience.
Feels to me like a writer ***ing off. Dan, is this not warranted?
So what I'm speaking of, like as the modern, like again, I'm focusing on the freedom aspect. Like,
Yeah.
This is like you can do what you want, and it will impact the game, and it's crazy to see it play out as you get further into it, and you start seeing you start realizing I could do things that could completely change my party's composition, or I could do something completely whack to solve a puzzle that I can't figure out. Extreme solutions, and you can see one of those on the site if you. It's really endgame though, and very spoilery.
And so what makes is the story compelling just because of that freedom, or is it just the equivalent of like walking into a room? It's like, look at all these toys you can play with.
Because
Well,
to me,
where's
all the stuff you're bringing up are just like these are all the gears, but they're not being brought
not
together by
focused.
anything.
I get that, but I'm saying like a lot of games claim to have the crazy open world experience, but it's more of an illusion. It's you can do X things, and in this one, you really do feel the creativity shine through when you come up.
I would rather have a reduced, like if you're saying there is an infinite number of
I'm
options,
not saying
I would rather
infinite.
have reduced options and an actual sort of deft hand delivering a story.
Yes.
This is more about you making those decisions. It isn't, but the story is much better than the first one, and it is cohesive. It's a classic fantasy tale, but the side quests are really where you get into the really cool stuff with the other characters. The origin characters are an excellent addition to the game. You're not playing this character you roll, and if I highly recommend playing the origin characters.
Can you explain the difference? So in the create a character, there's like what, 5 or so origin characters?
I think there's 6.
Okay, origin characters where it's like, hey, this character has a backstory, or you
Yes.
can make your own. And I didn't know what the difference was there.
The difference is those characters' backstories will give you different quests, and they have their own
Different quests.
motivations. They have their own goals. They will interact with characters differently based on their past and
Okay.
their future.
If it's like a BioWare game, it's the difference between like, do I want to roll with just like a custom generic character or like an actual designed party member?
But these design party members, like they come with skills that you pick. They're not like being rolled in any specific like they don't automatically have default skill sets and everything like that. You pick them for them.
It's a lot of picking.
But they have
a lot of picking.
they have complete voice work, they have specific quest lines and like
And you would-
unique
yeah.
things tied.
And you encounter all those other origin characters along the way, because I
You-
saw a
you
few
will-
of them on the boat and stuff.
You will encounter all of them, and you can recruit them to your team, but they will become unavailable at a certain point of the game.
Interesting.
So as someone who never really played Baldur's Gate, but kind of like I think Dragon Age 1 is probably my favorite one of the series. How friendly is this to newcomers? Does it feel like something you can jump in?
Compared to Baldur's Gate, certainly, but there's still that aspect of some PC RPG intimidation, I suppose, for someone coming from like a BioWare game, for example. Certainly, I would say there's definitely more of a barrier to entry on that front. However, they have provided an Explorer difficulty for this game that should offer you time to figure things out. Like Explorer difficulty is pretty easy, so you can sort of fumble your way through fights if you have to. You don't have to have the tactical know-how to be like, I need to set up my characters here before the fight starts, and have this barrel ready to go, and I'm going to fling that guy off with a teleport spell and all this stuff. You don't need to do much prep work for your fight. You can just kind of roll in and
Is how much of it? I mean, how much of the variety involves avoiding fights altogether, but like speech checks?
that's completely up to you.
Okay, so
Like-
I could play a version of this where I just talk my way out of most fights.
You will be. There's still going to be combat. Combat is an integral
Right.
part of the game, but there will be lots of situations you can talk yourself out of if you have a character with high persuasion and other skills that will help you in that area.
It's a really a nerd fantasy, best case scenario type of game. Like it seems like, oh, I'm so glad these are being revived and being made in that instance. So if people, when they jump in, do they need to know about the larger Divinity series or even Divinity Original Sin?
There
1?
are some aspects of the game that fall into that category, but I would advise including just skipping the first game completely if you're new to the series and just
Can you
going
read
right
like
to
a
this.
Wikipedia article? Would you recommend any of that?
You're going to have to most likely in the course of the game anyway. So
What?
yeah, it's tied into some of the puzzles later. So you might
Reading the Wikipedia article for Divinity Original
you may
Sin
do
1?
some research on some aspects of the game as part of it. Yeah,
That's
some of the universe.
Weird.
How odd. Okay. What is the larger world here? Is it generic fantasy? What's going on?
It's the core story is pretty cliche, but it's still very interesting to see how you impact it. That's the key difference here.
What type of cliche?
Very
What flavor of cliche?
Tolkien-esque, very.
Like dwarves and elves and stuff, but I think that they have some interesting twists on like elves being able to like transfer memories by eating flesh,
Right.
And like
I can do that. That's not.
This is
undead
that's why you're an elf.
as the sort of like stigmatized race that needs to like cover up so no one realizes they're just these walking skeletons.
And
This is cool, yeah.
This is something I want to touch upon. It's crazy how stuff like that, lore things, are impactful directly to the gameplay. The undead stuff, it's not just like for show. Like you can really screw your whole team up if you have somebody reveals the fact that you've got an undead in the center of town. That whole place is going to come down on you because they hate the Walking Dead. Same time, you heal the undead through poison, which is crazy,
Yeah.
and you can like use him as like a, he can tank all the point. Like, for instance, you walk into a room that you see poison traps in, just have him run through. He's cool. More insidious than that, there's something in the game called Death Fog, which is lethal to any living creature. However, you got an undead, no problem. He can breathe that fine. And there's a whole backstory for Fane especially that I highly recommend you uncover.
How did the studio pull this off? How is it just near infinite options for how you want to play?
Again, there
Just
can
seems
never be
expensive and
infinite, but
time-
yeah,
I
it seems
understand
It's crazy. It still feels like there are, right? It's
Yeah.
it's nuts. And again, as a consequence, there are some bugs and quirks in the game that you will have to be like, oh, well, for some reason my character's frozen, or I just walked through a door by mistake, and that stuff will happen.
I also want to point out multiplayer, like
we haven't
the
even-
first one.
Absolutely, multiplayer, not like the first one in the term. Well, right, up to 4 players this time instead of 2.
Same screen.
You will need 2 on one screen, so you can now you'll need 2 PCs if you want to do 4.
Interesting. Okay.
And
Is
sort of
that a
line 'em up.
satisfying way to work?
I mean, I have not actually tried that.
Okay,
so.
forget that in particular, but just the co-op angle. Is it kind of like Old Republic or something, where you're like voting on dialogue options?
Especially in
or-
this, it's really cute how they give you so many. These characters, if you're playing solo, you're already going to have interactions with each other that could greatly impact your playthrough. They might kill each other, they might fight each other, they might hate each other, they might leave your party forever. They have other goals. They might fight you later in the game. That's all dependent on your reactions to them. And if you have other players in them, then they're doing their own thing. You can sabotage your partner. It's up to you. But the co-op experience in the first game was great, and I expect it to be, as long as you're with a partner who is willing to play ball, is going to be fun.
for
So-
50, 60 hours.
So but there's also sort of a risk element, like in Minecraft, when you let someone into your world. Like you could bring a player in, like play multiplayer with someone, and they could be undead in the middle of town, and then
just running around
suddenly,
shrieking.
Well, that's a nightmare scenario. In fact, no. Okay.
Well, it depends on the person.
so this is
Some
funny.
can be lovely.
It's crazy how intimate it is. Check this out. This is a very, very, very light. This is not really a spoiler.
ooh,
but it's-
intimate.
I'm gonna tell you
Let's
about
get some
something that happens.
romantic music.
Yeah,
going.
bring the
There's a
lights
part in the
down.
game where you have to go into an arena fight blindfolded if you agree to it,
Yeah.
right? So your undead takes his hat off.
Uh-huh.
So and as soon as you get out of that arena, everyone down there wants to kill you because now they see he's undead. You don't even have a chance to put your your covering back on.
Oh.
So and it's like I did not foresee that as part of the element of just having to wear a blindfold in this
Didn't
fight.
foresee that as part of the element of having to wear a blindfold in this fight.
Yeah, it's a
What is
neat thing. It's a neat thing. It's just a string of that kind of stuff where it's
Yeah.
like, wow, I can't believe how the detail that goes into the experiences you'll see in that game.
So Divinity Original Sin, Pillars of Eternity from Obsidian. Why do you think the CRPG,
Torment,
Torment,
had to do-
exactly.
There's been a lot, and
even
Tyranny.
like Wasteland 2,
Oh,
you know,
Tyranny.
even
Yeah.
Wasteland 2.
what is it about this genre that just works so well with crowdfunding? Is it just the perfect...
I think you have this this much older school audience in many cases, and a whole new generation that wants to see what all the hype is about, but doesn't necessarily want to go back and play Baldur's Gate. And I agree with them. I went back and played the enhanced edition of Baldur's Gate 2. It's like, this is cool, but man, if I had not already played this game, I would be bored out of my mind and wondering what the hell to do.
So you think it's a new audience?
This game especially, I think if you're looking for your first trip through, this is a great way to do it, because you're going to get all that. There's great questing, and you know me, I'm not really a story guy at all.
Right.
And the story was still great, and I especially liked the way that you could influence it, and I really enjoyed pulling on the threads of the origin stories and seeing how those stories affect actual gameplay.
Overall story cliche.
Overall story,
Personal
is pretty
story,
cliche.
great.
Yes, the side
Okay.
stuff. It's the side stuff that does
Okay.
it, and how you can influence the outcome of the core story.
Yeah. I'll be damned. Joe, are you going to keep playing it? How are you feeling about it?
I might.
Yeah, there is controller support, so if you're hoping to play it on console, they haven't announced anything, right, Dan?
They have not,
Okay.
but
There are
everyone
tons of
seems
rumors flying around.
everyone
about it,
seems to
but-
assume that they will because the first one did. But I think
the controllers seem to work well
They-
just from messing around on PC.
I don't think it's a terribly dangerous assumption, but they still have not officially announced anything.
Yeah, for sure. 975.
Yep, and I stand by it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version and listen to new episodes airing every Thursday. We cover big games on the horizon, games that we've just reviewed. We have long-form developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So check it out every Thursday.